The Broadway community is mourning after the deadly stabbing of a former child actress in The Lion King. The body of 26-year-old Imani Dia Smith was found earlier this week in a home in New York suburb of Edison, New Jersey. Prosecutors have arrested a 35-year-old man in connection with the stabbing. They say the two knew each other and that this was not a random act of violence. Smith played young Nala in the Broadway adaptation of the hit Disney movie for about a year, starting in September of 2011.
On Sunday, December 21st, 2025, at approximately 9:18 a.m., emergency dispatchers in Edison, New Jersey received a 911 call reporting a stabbing inside a private residence on Grove Avenue. Police officers arriving at the scene located 26-year-old Imani Dia Smith suffering from multiple stab wounds. Smith was transported to Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital in nearby New Brunswick, where she was later pronounced dead by medical personnel. Smith had previously been a child performer on Broadway, known for her role as young Nala in the Lion King musical, but had stepped away from that stage years earlier. Within days, law enforcement arrested a 35-year-old man in connection with the incident and charged him with first-degree murder and related offenses, including endangering the welfare of a child who was reportedly present at the time. Authorities have confirmed the victim and suspect were known to each other, and the investigation remains active as key questions about the events leading up to the incident are yet to be answered. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Imani Dia Smith was born in 1999 into a family environment that supported structure, creativity, and discipline. She was raised alongside siblings in a household where early development and personal responsibility were emphasized. Her parents played an active role in guiding her activities, particularly during her childhood years, ensuring that education and personal conduct remained priorities alongside any extracurricular pursuits. From an early age, Smith was introduced to the performing arts. Her exposure included music, movement, and structured rehearsal environments. These activities were not casual hobbies, but organized commitments that required consistency and time management. Her family provided logistical and emotional support, including transportation, scheduling, and supervision, allowing her to participate in auditions and training programs while maintaining her schooling. The household environment placed importance on routine. School attendance, practice sessions, and family obligations were balanced through planning and oversight. This structure allowed Smith to develop early familiarity with professional expectations while still functioning within a family setting. Smith's entry into professional theater occurred during childhood, following an audition process that involved multiple rounds of evaluation. Casting for a major Broadway production required vocal ability, stage presence, discipline, and a capacity to follow instruction under pressure. Smith was selected to portray young Nala in The Lion King, a long-running Broadway production with high visibility and strict performance standards. The role required adherence to a demanding schedule. Rehearsals took place regularly, often outside of standard school hours. Performances followed a fixed weekly calendar, with understudy rotations and precise staging requirements. Smith was expected to memorize choreography, music, and blocking, while also maintaining academic responsibilities. As a child performer, she operated within a regulated professional environment. Labor rules limited work hours and required supervision, but expectations remained high. Mistakes during performances were not easily concealed, given the live audience setting. This environment required consistency, focus, and resilience. Early fame placed Smith in a public-facing role at a young age. She was recognized for her association with a well-known production, which shaped her identity outside the home. Media references, playbills, and public acknowledgement created a version of her known primarily through a role rather than her personal life. This distinction between public recognition and private identity became more pronounced as she aged. After leaving Broadway, Smith gradually stepped away from public performance. Her transition out of the entertainment industry was not marked by a single event, but by a shift in priorities. She no longer maintained a public profile connected to theater and focused instead on education, employment, and personal development. This period required adjustment. Moving from a structured, high-profile environment to a private adult life involved redefining goals and routines. Smith pursued opportunities outside of the entertainment industry, seeking stability rather than visibility. Employment during this time reflected practical needs rather than artistic ambition. Public recognition diminished as years passed. While her Broadway role remained part of her history, it no longer defined her daily life. This change required navigating anonymity after early exposure, including managing expectations from others who associate her identity with childhood success. Smith's adult life emphasized independence. Housing, employment, and parenting responsibilities became central. Her focus shifted from performance schedules to long-term planning, including financial stability and childcare arrangements. Smith became a mother in her early 20s. Parenthood introduced additional responsibilities and altered her daily structure. Caring for a young child required consistency, safety, and routine. Her schedule revolved around childcare needs, including meals, sleep routines, medical appointments, and supervision. Living arrangements were selected with consideration for accessibility and security. The home environment served as both a residence and a childcare space, requiring order and predictability. Smith's daily routine reflected the demands of parenting, balancing work obligations with caregiving. Motherhood increased reliance on stability. Decisions regarding relationships, housing, and employment carried additional weight due to their impact on her child. Safety within the home environment became a critical factor, particularly given the child's age and dependence on adult supervision. Smith was involved in a romantic relationship with Jordan D. Jackson Small. The relationship included periods of cohabitation and shared responsibilities related to parenting. The length of the relationship and its internal dynamics were not fully detailed publicly, but it was confirmed that the two were known to each other and connected beyond casual acquaintance. Like many domestic relationships informing criminal investigations, aspects of the relationship remain private. Available information indicates that the relationship involved direct contact and shared obligations, particularly regarding their child. Any conflicts or instability documented by authorities have not been fully disclosed, though investigators later confirmed the incident was not random. The nature of the relationship placed Smith in close proximity to Jackson Small, both physically and legally. This proximity became a central factor during the investigation. Smith and Jackson Small shared a child, creating a permanent legal and emotional connection. Parenthood introduced obligations that extended beyond personal disputes. Decisions regarding custody, visitation, and caregiving required coordination and communication. Co-parenting dynamics often require negotiation, particularly when relationships change or deteriorate. The presence of a shared child can complicate separation, making complete disengagement difficult. Legal responsibilities may require continued interaction, even in the presence of conflict. This shared responsibility meant that both individuals remained connected through daily logistics and long-term planning. Any disagreements or instability were amplified by the need to consider the child's welfare. In the days preceding the incident, Smith continued her routine activities, including childcare and personal obligations. Specific details regarding her last communications and movements have not been fully released by authorities. Investigators have acknowledged that they are examining timelines, digital communications, and witness statements to establish context. There is no public confirmation of significant deviations from her routine. However, investigators typically review changes in behavior, missed appointments, or unusual communications when assessing escalation patterns. Contact with family members, friends, or the suspect during this period remains part of the investigative record. Questions remain regarding interactions between Smith and Jackson Small in the days leading up to the incident. Authorities have not disclosed whether disputes occurred immediately prior or whether warning signs were documented. These unanswered questions form a critical part of the ongoing investigation. In the early morning hours of December 21st, emergency services were contacted from a residential address in Edison, New Jersey. The call placed shortly after 9 a.m., reported a violent situation inside a private residence. Dispatch records indicate the caller described a woman who had sustained serious injuries and required immediate medical assistance. Based on the information provided, the incident was categorized as a high-priority emergency, prompting a rapid response from local police and emergency medical services. Officers from the Edison Police Department were dispatched to the scene along with paramedics. The initial report did not classify the event as a homicide. Instead, it was treated as a domestic emergency involving severe physical harm. At that point, authorities had limited information regarding what had occurred inside the residence, who was involved, or how long the victim had been injured before help was requested. The location was a residential home, not an isolated or commercial area, which immediately raised concerns about the safety of others who might be present. As officers approached the address, they prepared for a potentially unstable situation, following standard procedures for domestic violence-related calls, which are considered among the most unpredictable and dangerous for first responders. Upon entering the residence, officers encountered the victim, later identified as Imani Dia Smith. She was found suffering from multiple stab wounds. Her condition was critical, and she showed clear signs of violent assault. The injuries were consistent with sharp force trauma, indicating the use of a bladed weapon. Blood was visible at the scene, including on the victim and within the surrounding area, suggesting the assault had occurred inside the home rather than elsewhere. Officers conducted a quick assessment to determine whether the suspect was still present and whether there was an immediate threat. During this assessment, they confirmed that a young child was inside the residence. The child was not physically injured but was present during or immediately following the incident. This discovery significantly altered the scope of the response, introducing child welfare considerations alongside the criminal investigation. The condition of the residence indicated signs of a struggle. Items within the home appeared displaced, and the distribution of blood suggested movement during the assault rather than a single stationary attack. Officers secured the immediate area and ensured the child was removed from proximity to the victim and the potential crime scene. Child protective protocols were initiated to ensure the safety of the child. At this stage, officers focused on preserving life while also maintaining the integrity of the scene. No formal conclusions were drawn at the location, but the severity of the injuries and the presence of a weapon-related assault immediately elevated the incident beyond a routine emergency response. Paramedics entered the residence shortly after police secured the area. Emergency medical personnel assessed Imani Dia Smith and began life-saving measures. Due to the severity of her injuries, rapid transport was deemed necessary. She was placed into an ambulance and transported to Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital. During transport, paramedics continued emergency intervention consistent with traumatic injury protocols, including efforts to control bleeding and stabilize vital signs. Despite these efforts, the injuries were extensive. Upon arrival at the hospital, Smith was taken into emergency care. Medical staff attempted further resuscitative measures. However, she was later pronounced deceased. The official time of death was recorded at the hospital. Following her death, medical personnel notified law enforcement, and the incident was formally classified as a homicide. The victim's body was secured for autopsy, which would later provide further detail regarding the number, location, and severity of the stab wounds, as well as the precise cause of death. Following confirmation of death, the residence was officially designated a crime scene. Investigators from the Edison Police Department, along with detectives from the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office, took control of the location. Access to the home was restricted, and crime scene tape was placed around the property to prevent contamination or unauthorized entry. Investigators began a systematic examination of the residence. Photographs were taken to document the scene as it was found, including the position of the victim prior to removal, visible bloodstains, and the overall condition of the home. Measurements were recorded to establish spatial relationships between key areas, including where the assault likely occurred and where the victim was found. Physical evidence was collected, including blood samples for DNA analysis, items believed to have been involved in the struggle, and the suspected weapon. The weapon, described as a sharp instrument consistent with the inflicted injuries, was recovered from within the residence. It was secured and sent for forensic testing to determine the presence of fingerprints, DNA, and blood matching the victim or potential suspect. Bloodstain pattern analysis was conducted to help investigators reconstruct the sequence of events. The positioning and direction of blood evidence suggested movement during the assault, supporting the conclusion that the incident involved an active confrontation rather than an isolated strike. Investigators also documented signs of forced or rapid movement, such as overturned items or disturbed furniture. The entire scene was processed over several hours. Investigators ensured that all potential evidence was collected before releasing the residence. Once processing was complete, the home remained closed off pending further investigative needs. Early in the investigation, law enforcement confirmed that the incident was not random. Through initial interviews and preliminary findings, investigators established that the victim and the person responsible were known to each other. This confirmation immediately narrowed the scope of the investigation. Domestic homicide cases often involve individuals within the victim's close personal circle, and investigators prioritize examining recent contacts, household members, and romantic relationships. Based on available information, attention quickly centered on an individual with direct personal ties to the victim. Investigators conducted interviews with family members, neighbors, and others who may have had contact with the victim in the hours or days leading up to the incident. Digital evidence, including phone records and electronic communications, was also reviewed to establish timelines and interactions. Within 48 hours of the incident, law enforcement identified Jordan D. Jackson Small as the primary suspect. He was located and taken into custody without incident. The arrest occurred following the accumulation of sufficient evidence to establish probable cause. Jackson Small was charged with first-degree murder, weapons offenses related to the use of a bladed instrument, and endangering the welfare of a child due to the presence of the victim's young son in a residence during the incident. He was transported to the Middlesex County Adult Correctional Center, where he was held pending further legal proceedings. Authorities stated that the investigation remained ongoing and that additional evidence would be presented as the case moved through the judicial process. At the time of arrest, no motive had been publicly disclosed, and investigators continued to withhold certain details to preserve the integrity of the case. Following the fatal incident involving Imani Dia Smith, authorities formally charged Jordan D. Jackson Small with multiple serious offenses. The primary charge is first-degree murder, reflecting the severity and premeditated nature of the act. In legal terms, a first-degree murder charge is reserved for homicides where intent, planning, or extreme recklessness is present, distinguishing it from lesser degrees of homicide that may involve negligence or lack of forethought. Prosecutors assert that the circumstances surrounding the attack demonstrate deliberate action rather than an accidental outcome, underscoring the gravity of the legal classification. In addition to murder, Jackson Small faces weapons-related charges. These offenses address the use and possession of a deadly instrument during the commission of a crime. The presence of a weapon in the context of the incident strengthens the legal position that the act was intentional, as it shows preparation and deliberate employment of force capable of causing serious injury or death. The charges also include endangering the welfare of a child, highlighting the presence of a minor at the scene. Legally, this charge arises when an individual places a child in a situation that threatens physical or emotional safety. In this case, the child, a 3-year-old, was present either during or immediately after the incident. This charge carries separate legal consequences and reinforces the overall severity of the defendant's alleged actions. Taken together, the combination of first-degree murder, weapons offenses, and child endangerment indicates that authorities view the incident as an intentional act rather than an accident. Each element, planning, use of a weapon, and disregard for the child's safety, contributes to the argument that the attack was deliberate, informing both the prosecution strategy and potential sentencing outcomes. A critical component of this case involves the presence of Imani Dia Smith's young child. Reports confirm that the child was either present at the scene or arrived shortly thereafter, directly exposing the minor to the aftermath of a violent event. Such exposure carries legal implications, as the law seeks to protect minors from environments that could compromise their safety or well-being. Authorities have initiated child welfare intervention, ensuring that the child is removed from potential harm and placed under professional care while the investigation and legal proceedings continue. The incident raises considerations for long-term guardianship. Given the death of the mother and the detention of the father, arrangements for the child's care are necessary to ensure stability, legal compliance, and protection. Guardianship may involve relatives, court-appointed custodians, or social service agencies, depending on available resources and family circumstances. While psychological impacts on the child are a matter of concern, public reporting avoids speculation. Law enforcement and child welfare agencies focus on securing immediate safety and monitoring development in controlled, professional settings. The presence of the child during the event elevates the seriousness of the charges and highlights the broader societal responsibility to safeguard vulnerable individuals in domestic environments. The suspect in this case, Jordan D. Jackson Small, is 35 years old. Background information establishes that he had a known personal relationship with the victim, sharing a child with Imani Dia Smith. Their familial connection situates the incident within a domestic context rather than a random confrontation. Authorities are reviewing Jackson Small's personal history for any elements relevant to the case, including prior criminal activity, domestic disputes, or documented conflicts that may inform motive or behavioral patterns. As part of standard procedure, law enforcement compiles background information to determine whether previous conduct may have contributed to the current charges. At present, Jackson Small remains in custody. His detention status and housing are under the authority of the Middlesex County Adult Correctional Center, pending initial hearings and pre-trial proceedings. Standard detention protocols ensure both the security of the individual and the community, while preserving the legal integrity of the ongoing investigation. Law enforcement officials have provided limited statements, outlining the confirmed facts of the case while withholding details that could compromise the investigation. Confirmed elements include the identity of the victim, the relationship between the suspect and the victim, the nature of the injury sustained, and the presence of a child during or immediately after the incident. Certain aspects remain undisclosed, including the full sequence of events leading up to the attack, the suspect's statements, and forensic specifics pending analysis. Investigators have emphasized that the case is under active review, with evidence collection ongoing. This includes both physical forensics and digital evidence, such as communications, social media interactions, and timelines that may provide context for motive and planning. Anticipated forensic findings include fingerprints, DNA analysis, and potential weapon trace evidence. These elements will be crucial for corroborating the sequence of events, confirming the use of a weapon, and substantiating the charges of first-degree murder. Digital forensics may reveal communications between the victim and suspect or third parties, establishing timelines, intent, and prior interactions. Investigators will also review household surveillance, phone records, and any relevant third-party observations to reconstruct a comprehensive account of the incident. The ongoing investigation emphasizes accuracy and adherence to legal procedure. Authorities balance the need for public information with the imperative to preserve the integrity of evidence. Updates are expected as forensic analyses are completed, and as the legal process progresses through initial hearings, pre-trial motions, and eventual trial proceedings. The news of Imani Dia Smith's death reached her immediate family within hours of the police arriving at her Edison, New Jersey residence. Law enforcement officials made formal notifications to her parents, Monique Ranshelper and Ronnie Helper, and her two younger siblings. The family was informed of the circumstances of her death, including the nature of her injuries and the involvement of her boyfriend, who had been arrested in connection with the incident. These notifications were carried out in accordance with established protocols for cases involving violent death, ensuring that family members were given factual information while being prepared for further investigative procedures. Following the notification, the family faced the task of funeral planning under severe time constraints. Decisions regarding service location, burial, or cremation options, and coordination with friends, community members, and colleagues were undertaken. This process introduced additional logistical and financial strain, as planning a memorial, while also navigating the legal and investigative processes, placed multiple demands on the family. The costs associated with funeral services, transportation, and memorial arrangements quickly became apparent, prompting the family to seek alternative financial support. In response, the family established fundraising efforts to offset expenses and provide for necessary support. A GoFundMe campaign was launched by Smith's aunt to cover funeral costs, counseling services for family members, and ongoing care for her 3-year-old child. The fundraising campaign also served as a public acknowledgement of the need for community support in the aftermath of a violent death. Donations from friends, colleagues, and members of the theater community contributed to the family's ability to manage immediate financial obligations, while also providing structured resources for trauma care and support. A central focus of the family was ensuring the well-being and care of Smith's child. The young child, present in the household at the time of the incident, required immediate assessment and intervention by child welfare services. Arrangements for temporary guardianship were considered to provide stability and maintain the child's routine while the investigation and legal proceedings were underway. Coordination between family members, social services, and legal representatives was necessary to safeguard the child's interests and ensure continuity of care, highlighting the additional responsibilities imposed on surviving family members following a domestic homicide. The story of Smith's death spread rapidly through both traditional media outlets and social media platforms. Her prior work as a child actress in Broadway's The Lion King brought immediate attention to the case. Coverage highlighted her early career accomplishments, connecting the incident to her public profile and bringing heightened visibility to the investigation. Reports circulated quickly, emphasizing her Broadway history, while also noting her status as a mother and the circumstances surrounding the arrest of her boyfriend. Public reaction on social media reflected widespread attention and discussion of the incident. Users shared news reports, personal reflections, and calls for justice, often tagging Smith's name and referencing her performance in The Lion King. The viral nature of these posts demonstrated the speed at which information can propagate, particularly when public figures involved, and underscored the role of social media in shaping public awareness of violent incidents. Media framing of the case frequently focused on the combination of her professional background, the violent circumstances of her death, and the involvement of her intimate partner. News outlets highlighted the first-degree murder charge, the alleged endangerment of a child, and the ongoing legal proceedings. Coverage often presented the facts in a straightforward manner, but the prominence of her theatrical history contributed to heightened public interest, which in turn affected the manner in which journalists and broadcasters approach reporting. Balancing the public interest in the case with the privacy needs of the victim's family proved challenging. Media outlets were tasked with reporting verified information while avoiding speculative commentary that could interfere with ongoing legal procedures or the welfare of Smith's child. The family faced repeated intrusion from journalists seeking comment or access, necessitating careful coordination with legal representatives and designated spokespeople to ensure that personal and sensitive information was protected while the case received necessary coverage. Following the arrest of Jordan D. Jackson Small, pretrial detention was established to mitigate the risk of flight, interference with evidence, or potential harm to the public. The suspect remains in custody, and hearings are scheduled to address bail status, pretrial motions, and other procedural matters. Pretrial detention ensures that the suspect remains available for the legal process and that investigative authorities can continue gathering evidence without concern for interference. The expected court process involves multiple stages, beginning with arraignment and moving through pretrial motions, discovery, and ultimately trial if a plea agreement is not reached. Both the prosecution and defense have the opportunity to present arguments, review evidence, and examine witness testimony. These proceedings are governed by established legal procedures to ensure due process and the rights of all parties involved. Potential defense strategies may include arguments regarding intent, mental state, or alternate narratives of the events leading to Smith's death. Legal representatives of the suspect could seek to introduce evidence that challenges the prosecution's timeline, questions witness credibility, or asserts mitigating circumstances. Defense strategies are anticipated to focus on minimizing legal liability while scrutinizing procedural and evidentiary foundations of the case. The prosecutorial approach emphasizes the severity of the charges, including first-degree murder and child endangerment. Prosecutors are tasked with establishing a clear link between the suspect's actions and the resulting fatality, supported by forensic evidence, witness statements, and other investigative findings. The prosecution may also highlight patterns of prior behavior or context within the domestic relationship to demonstrate elements of premeditation, recklessness, or disregard for the welfare of the child involved. Ongoing coordination between investigative authorities and prosecutorial teams ensures that the case progresses through the legal system in accordance with procedural standards. The The case of Imani Dia Smith highlights broader dynamics associated with domestic violence in intimate relationships. Patterns of escalation, including prior conflicts, controlling behavior, and threats, are frequently observed in similar cases. Experts note that domestic violence can follow a predictable trajectory, with increasing frequency and severity of incidents prior to fatal outcomes. Understanding these dynamics provides context for both prevention efforts and investigative priorities. Comparisons with other cases reveal recurring systemic challenges. Warning signs often precede acts of lethal violence, including prior reports to law enforcement, unreported incidents, and informal attempts at conflict resolution that fail to address underlying risks. In Smith's case, investigators are reviewing available records, communications, and witness testimony to determine whether identifiable risk factors were present and whether systemic interventions could have mitigated the outcome. Systemic failures, such as gaps in reporting mechanisms, limited access to support services, and insufficient enforcement of protective measures, are key considerations in analyzing domestic homicide cases. The interaction between law enforcement, social services, and community organizations is critical in identifying at-risk individuals and implementing interventions. The Smith case exemplifies the challenges in recognizing and addressing potential threats before escalation to lethal violence, providing insight into both individual and institutional responsibilities. In the hours leading up to the discovery of Imani Dia Smith's death, many questions remain unanswered. Police reports established that the emergency call occurred on the morning of December 21st, 2025, at a residential address in Edison, New Jersey. However, the sequence of events prior to the call remains largely undocumented in public records. Investigators have indicated that Smith and her boyfriend, Jordan D. Jackson Small, were present in the home during this time. Details regarding interactions, movements, or disputes between the two have not been fully disclosed. Authorities are examining whether opportunities for intervention were missed. No public record confirms if neighbors, friends, or family members observed warning signs or attempted to contact authorities before the incident. The absence of such information leaves critical gaps in understanding the escalation of events. Similarly, digital evidence such as phone records, text messages, or surveillance footage has not been fully released. These materials could potentially clarify the timeline and provide insight into the dynamics of the relationship and any warning signals. There is also uncertainty surrounding physical evidence that has not been made public. While police have confirmed that a stabbing occurred, the specific circumstances, including the weapon's origin, location within the residence, and forensic details such as fingerprints or blood patterns, remain confidential. The content of statements given by witnesses, neighbors, or emergency personnel is largely sealed, limiting public understanding of the case. Forensic analysis, including potential toxicology results, also remains undisclosed. Each of these gaps contributes to a broader uncertainty about exactly how the events unfolded, highlighting the ongoing challenges of piecing together a precise timeline. Legally, the case is active and under the jurisdiction of Middlesex County authorities. Jordan D. Jackson Small has been formally charged with first-degree murder, endangering the welfare of a child, and weapons offenses. He remains in custody pending further proceedings. The specific details of his detention, such as bail status or pretrial restrictions, have not been widely reported. Pending court dates have not been publicly finalized, but preliminary hearings are anticipated as authorities move forward with evidence review and preparation for prosecution. These hearings will likely focus on the presentation of key evidence, the admissibility of witness statements, and the clarification of legal arguments surrounding motive, intent, and the circumstances leading to Smith's death. The progression from arrest to trial will be influenced by the prosecution's ability to establish a clear timeline and demonstrate premeditation, as well as the defense's strategy in challenging the evidence or framing the suspect's actions. Multiple outcomes remain possible within the legal framework. If convicted on first-degree murder charges, Jackson Small could face life imprisonment. Lesser charges or findings of mitigating circumstances could lead to reduced sentencing. Additionally, the charge of endangering the welfare of a child carries potential implications for custody or guardianship of the victim's 3-year-old son, affecting both immediate living arrangements and long-term family dynamics. The court will also consider weapon-related charges independently, which may influence overall sentencing. The combination of charges ensures a complex legal process with multiple stages, appeals, and potential adjustments to sentencing based on procedural and evidentiary developments. The long-term impact on Imani Dia Smith's child is a significant consideration in this case. The child, present in the household at the time of the incident, will require ongoing care, supervision, and psychological support. Legal decisions surrounding custody, guardianship, and welfare will directly shape the child's environment and future opportunities. This dimension of the case highlights the broader consequences of domestic violence beyond the immediate fatality, emphasizing the enduring effects on dependents. Smith's history as a former Broadway performer, known for a role as young Nala in The Lion King, introduces additional dimensions regarding the intersection of fame, privacy, and violence. Her prior public visibility does not diminish her vulnerability in private life, but does complicate public interest in the case. Media attention, social scrutiny, and online discussions may influence public perception, even as legal proceedings strive to remain impartial. The balance between reporting factual developments and protecting the privacy of surviving family members, including the child, remains delicate and essential. This case continues to demand scrutiny for several reasons. First, it raises ongoing questions about how domestic disputes escalate into lethal incidents and whether intervention measures could have prevented the outcome. Second, it highlights gaps in public access to information regarding evidence, timelines, and investigative findings. Third, it underscores the potential consequences of intimate partner violence when children are involved, both in immediate terms and in shaping long-term family dynamics. Finally, the high-profile nature of the victim underscores a persistent tension between public curiosity and private tragedy, reinforcing the need for careful, transparent reporting and judicial oversight. As the legal process unfolds, attention will likely focus on clarifying unanswered questions, evaluating the effectiveness of preventive measures, and ensuring that justice considers both the criminal actions and the broader societal impact. The resolution of the case will not only determine the accountability of the suspect, but also set precedents for the handling of similar incidents, particularly when children and public figures are involved. Until full disclosure of evidence and trial outcomes occurs, critical aspects of this case will remain under investigation, maintaining a degree of uncertainty and compelling public and legal attention. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.